Welcome to Nicstalgia, your favorite pop culture podcast, where we have deep conversations about superficial things. I'm Nicole, your host, and each week we unlock core memories from the 90s, 2000s, and beyond while examining the past through a contemporary lens. Our guests are pop culture tastemakers who explore how our formative experiences shape how we see the world. We talk about trends, fashion, music, identity, consumer behavior, societal attitudes, and more. Nicstalgia is a reminder of how our individual and collective memories make us feel like we belong. And if you like Nicstalgia, be sure to follow, subscribe, rate, review, and share with a friend who loves pop culture as much as we do. Plus, we have a lot of fun. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Nicstalgia. I have Jaz here with me today, and I'm very excited. She is the love child of Dua Lipa and Weird Al, two honestly legendary figures that have come together in someone that has the presence, the performance, and just like the spunky personality to go along with it, which I love. So welcome, Jaz.
Man, thank you. It's so great to be here. Lovely introduction of my parents. I appreciate that. Hey, mom and dad. I'm really excited to be here, and that intro just got me all warm and fuzzy inside.
I'm glad. You know what? As far as I know, Dua Lipa and Weird Al both listen to the podcast. So you saying hi to your parents, like there's a likelihood that they're going to hear it and be, oh, our daughter. They're proud. They're proud parents.
Yeah, Weird Al's just finding out today that he has a child out in the world. So sorry, Dad.
I mean, okay, at the time of recording, his movie with Daniel Radcliffe hasn't come out yet, but I'm like really excited for it.
Yeah, me too. And I would not have initially thought that would be the casting choice, but I have a feeling there's a reason for it, and I'm open to finding out.
I am too, and hearing about how, isn't Evan Rachel Wood? No. There was another thing they did where she's Madonna. I think she plays Madonna in it.
That's news to me, and I'm very excited for that because I'm a huge fan of hers. And I'm sure she also listens to the podcast. So, Evan, hey, girl.
Hey, right. These are all friends of the podcast, friends of Nicstalgia, and just people. When I talk about our community, our listeners, I mean, it's really extensive to everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so obviously you're very funny. I enjoy your content so much. And I love that bit of irreverence. I love curiosity and enthusiasm and just the way that you're able to, okay, I'm going to talk about your recent music video about plants, and you just take it somewhere that it absolutely needed to go. So where do you kind of get your sense of humor from, and how does that lightheartedness inform your content?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, thank you. Most of the time, I'm thinking the exact opposite, where I'm like, I'm taking this where it does not need to go. Nobody asked for this. I go there anyway. Well, my real life parents, I would say, my mom is very, very smart and very sharp, and my dad is wildly inappropriate. So I think when you combine those two things, you get me, which I try to play to the top of my intelligence while also being kind of shameless. Like, it's very hard. Once you decide that not much can embarrass you, life becomes a lot more free. And also, I think the things that I joke about on my, in my videos, they're all very human things. They're all things that we've all experienced, whether it's like IBS or whatever, marriage stuff or the awkwardness of growing up. There are all of these things that I think when we were younger, we were kind of told not to talk about. Like, everything was embarrassing back then. And so I feel like if you can own those things and acknowledge that, like, we all were there, we all were these very embarrassing, greasy monkeys, that it's just, one, it makes people feel seen. and they want to gravitate towards your content. But two, it makes everybody feel a little bit less alone in their experience. And like, I kind of wish I had the wherewithal at 13 to look around at the girls around me and be like, listen, we're all bleeding. We're all disgusting. Like, let's just be in it together, because it would have been a lot less of a mortifying existence. But I think, there's this book that I had to read in college, but it's called Truth in Comedy. And I always think about that, because I think the funniest thing, it's like stand-ups, right? They're always like talking about stuff that we all know to be true and we've all experienced, but we're not all comfortable saying it out loud. So I'm happy to be the mouthpiece for all of the most embarrassing parts of life. It makes me happy. Personally, I like to make people laugh while the world burns. It's crazy out there.
It is. And I think you do that too. Was there a certain age that you got to, a certain life milestone, or just like a combination of days that went by where you realized, hey, wait a second, being embarrassing is actually like cool and it's funny and it's something that people can relate to, and it kind of removes that layer of shame that we've been conditioned to feel?
Yeah. It's funny because as a kid, I was a child actor. I started acting professionally at the age of 6. So like, while I could get out on stage and sing for hundreds of people, I was very easily embarrassed, like just very easily mortified. I was very creative on stage and in the home, but like in social situations, it was like I had a lot of social anxiety. And I think as I got older, I moved to New York at the age of 21. And there's something about the city that there's this level of anonymity. And I think anyone who's ever lived in New York will know, like, you've done some pretty embarrassing shit. You've cried on the subway. You can't help but have very human, uncomfortable moments in front of other humans. It's just the way that it works there. And so you kind of get used to this, like, well, I don't really give a shit. Like, I'm never going to see these people again. So why not? Like, I'm going to let myself have a cry, or I'm going to fall down the subway stairs on the ice and like laugh at myself and get back up, or what, whatever it is. So that was really good practice for me. And also just like the nature of theater and improv comedy, which I've done for a long time, is just like, get used to feeling stupid. Like, that is like the first thing you can do, is just like stop trying to look cool. And I think there are actually a lot of lessons. This sounds so obnoxious. Like one of those improv kids, but like, I do think there are a lot of lessons in improv that apply really well to life. Like, and one of those is like not being afraid to look stupid or silly, just kind of putting yourself out there. And life is so much more fun when you like run out of fucks to give. I think maybe that also comes with being in your 30s, but when you stop caring so much about what other people think, because ultimately people are drawn to that energy. Like, people look at somebody who does not give a shit, and it like, I feel like it makes them want to be along for that ride, because anything could happen.
Yeah. I remember reading in Abby Jacobson's book, I think it's called I Might Regret This, and she talks about crying on the corner of 15th Street and 8th Avenue. And I was like, wait, like, that's where my old office
there.
Yeah, my old office used to be there. And I'm like, wait, I have cried. Actually, I had 2 offices in meatpacking, and I'm like, I've cried at every single intersection between 14th Street and Houston Street west of 7th Ave. Like, just every single corner of every intersection. Crying in front of people. I've fallen in front of people.
Yeah.
There's just always somebody around watching you. And when I've seen other people fall, it's like, okay, I'm not going to lie. Maybe I laugh a little bit in my head, but I understand that it's just human, and that you're always going to have some kind of either willing or unwilling audience in that scenario. And I think that's what really helps you build thick skin, because to live in New York City, that's almost a requirement.
It's just part of being human, to err, or is it to err is to be human? Like, none of us are perfect. And how fucking boring would it be if we were? Like, that's part of the, I mean, that's why I love being in the city and people watching, because you just never know what you're going to witness. But even like you said, you read her book and she like revealed this kind of embarrassing thing, but it immediately made you feel a connection to her. You're like, oh my God, I did that. And it's like, yeah, no shit. We all fucking have cried in public if we lived in New York. And it's the great unifier. It's, I recommend that everybody embarrass themselves in public, at least on a semi-regular basis. It's good for the soul.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't take yourself too seriously in this life. It's just too short.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think I've realized too that once you kind of gain that confidence to put yourself out there and get over that fear of looking stupid, I think that that goes hand in hand with getting over the fear of not being liked, because I've experienced that too, where you do something that feels more in alignment with who you want to be and who you are in the present moment. And then other people can look at it and be like, oh, she's like trying too hard, or she's looking so silly, or she's trying to be funny. And it's like, well, no, I just am funny, or I just am being stupid. Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying that anybody being themselves should invite that kind of treatment upon to themselves. But at the same time, it's like you learn to tune that out too, where it's like, you know what? This is me. This is what I'm doing. And that is going to resonate with some people, and then it might trigger other people who are still afraid to really step into who they are, who are living kind of with that shadow side of, wow, I wish I could be seen. I wish that I had the confidence of her to do what she's doing. And, people play with that comparison syndrome mode all day, especially on the internet. But yeah, you just kind of get equipped with this emotional toolbox, whether it's as an actor or content creator or just a human in the world moving through.
Yeah, big time. I spent far too much time of my youth wasting energy on trying to figure out why somebody didn't like me, or why, somebody was my friend and then didn't want to be my friend anymore, whatever it was. And as I got older, I just realized, like, I'm not going to be for everyone, right? And that's okay. And I think if you are trying to play for everyone, you're not doing anything specific, right? Specific enough to stand out or to be a unique individual. I am not for everyone, and everyone's not for me, but the people who are into what I'm putting out, they seem to really dig it, and I'm thrilled about that. And it means that, like, I'm doing something right for the people that I want to be attracting. And I'm fully good with that. I don't want to be so boring and so PC that, like, everyone is just mildly cool with me. I'd rather be like, have a couple toes over the line and have a smaller amount of people be like fucking obsessed with me.
Yeah, definitely. And even like I mentioned with your Plant Daddy video, I saw it and I'm like, this is funny. And right, even just being able to have a strong point of view, it brings you back to your sense of self. What kind of content do I want to be putting out there? What kind of message do I want to be sending to the world about who I am that reinforces that sense of self? And right, it's not for everybody. But I think that when people go, you put something out with the intention that you're having fun, you're not hurting anybody. And if you like it, that's awesome. If you don't, all right.
Right. And I feel like as creators, and especially as female creators or female identifying creators, we have a responsibility to be continuously pushing the envelope on what all of the men before us told us that we can and can't do. Like, I just recommend anyone go back and look at the history of female comedians. There are many awesome documentaries, but like, we've come a long way and we're still pushing. And for me, in trying to find my voice, I think, I've been in this industry since I was a kid, and you quickly realize that it's sort of like, well, there's a few types of women you can be. You can be fat and funny, or you can be hot. or you can be hot and dumb, and that's your brand, and then that's a brand of funny, or you can be a boring ingenue, and that is really fucking limiting. I mean, I feel like we're doing better now. We've come a long way, but for me, I kind of was like, I would like to show that women can be funny and smart and sexy and all of the things at once. And it's not just like, but if you're hot, then the only brand of comedy that you can bring is like a compilation of booby accidents on America's Funniest Home Videos. Do you know what I mean? It's like we can all be playing to the top of our intelligence and not be put into a box. We can be all of the things and fucking crush it. And Plant Daddy, my single in the music video, is really a representation of that, where it's like, yeah, women can bring the full package.
Definitely. I've talked before on the podcast about how Elle Woods was actually such an inspiration to me, because I majored in fashion merchandising, and yeah, and there's a scene where her guidance counselor says, where Elle says, I'm going to go to Harvard. The guidance counselor says, what's your backup plan? She's like, I have none. I'm going to Harvard. And she's like, your major's fashion merchandising. And I didn't catch that when I was a kid watching the movie, but now it's like, wait, I succumb to so many of those pressures about, okay, you have to be pretty, you have to be smart, but not that smart. But if you're majoring in fashion, you're probably not that smart anyway. And just all of these preconceived notions about who you should be. And I grew up dancing too. So the whole idea of performing for people and being on stage for people, and all of these themes around, okay, you have to be seen, you have to be your biggest and best self, but actually not too much. Don't be a prima donna. Don't try to be the center of attention, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Don't push back. Don't say no. All of these things. Yeah. 110%. Oh, there's a lot of toxicity there. And ultimately, the sooner you can, and again, who you are is always going to change. But the sooner that you can sit down with yourself and really ask yourself the questions like, what do I want? And what's the kind of person I want to be? And what about me makes me feel proud of myself? It's going to be a lot easier to set boundaries with others and to know, like, this deserves my bandwidth. This certainly does fucking not. And it took me, we're all going to be working on this forever. But man, I really hope that girls are coming to this conclusion younger than I think our generation did, just because we weren't taught, and we didn't see it modeled that often.
That's very true. Okay. I love your podcast. You host Millennial Movie Club, you co-host, and something that I thought was very interesting was that you discussed the similarities between one of my favorite other movies, Never Been Kissed, and Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Which was crazy, because whether it was the buzzword like Rufus versus Fetch, the popular clique, the slow walk, it really reminded me that Mean Girls is a complete ripoff of every other movie. I'm saying this as somebody
who was shocking.
I love Mean Girls, and I've seen it so many times I couldn't even begin to think about the count. But if you've seen Never Been Kissed, Jawbreaker, Heathers, really any kind of high school clique girly movie from before 2004, you will see the similarities. They are staggering, whether it's like that slow walk down the hallway. And I even realized after I watched My So-Called Life for the first time about a year ago, this is my favorite show of all time now. There were some similarities to Mean Girls that were so close, it was eerie. So I want to share them with you.
Please.
Okay. The first is, so Rayanne is the best friend of the main character, Angela, in My So-Called Life. And Rayanne is kind of like the bad girl. And they go to Rayanne's house, I believe. And I think it was her mom who says this exact quote. I realize there will be some drinking and I'd rather have it go on under my roof. which was almost identical to
Almost
what
verbatim.
Regina George's mom said to Katie, you know, oh, happy hours from 4 to 6. If you're going to drink, I'd rather have you do it in the house. I'm like, that's a blatant copyright, intellectual property infringement. There are two more examples. Okay, one is when they pan to, so Angela got a bad grade on a test. So they zoom in on her test with the red number with it circled, just like they did when Katie got her test back when she started to act like she was dumb in class so Aaron Samuels could tutor her. I'm like, that's weird. And then the last one was where I guess someone in school, there's one of Ran and Angela's friends is Ricky, and someone goes to Ricky, cool vest. And it reminded me of in Mean Girls when Karen was talking about the kind of rules of the plastics, and she was like, they were real the day I wore that vest.
Whoa.
And I'm like, wow.
That's blowing my mind.
I'm like, I could have written Mean Girls at this point. So I think that's very interesting.
It is interesting. And it's funny because Tina Fey is like my hero. Like, truly love her so much. And I wonder sometimes, like, you know, we've seen a lot of these models like over and over and over again. And so sometimes it's like, are there really any novel ideas, or have we all just been incepted by everything we've absorbed from everything we've watched, and we like think it's new, but it's really not. But then there are times where I'm like, but like even something as simple as, or not simple, as blatant as the fact like in Never Been Kissed, where the first thing she does is join the math team, the denominators, and in Mean Girls she joins the mathletes. It's like it just is too parallel, and I wonder, like, was she trying to sort of hint at like a Not Another Teen movie, like wink at all of the cliches, or is it just like, fair enough, this is pointed at a new generation who's going to enjoy these same plot lines in a different way with different slang terms? You know, I don't know. I think she knew she wasn't breaking the mold with it. But when you start to compare it, especially at our age, when we sort of straddle both generations a little bit, it's like, oh, shit. This is a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, I read a book a little while ago. I'm pretty sure it was Hitmakers, which basically it's very similar in ideology to The Tipping Point, where it's like, okay, what things resonate with people, what kind of things are popular versus what isn't. And it made reference to kind of like where something has to be similar enough where people recognize it to an extent, but different enough to where they think they're getting something new. And it's the same kind of confirmation bias that comes in where it has to do with the society or the societal standards of beauty. Like, you see somebody and a famous actress, and you think, wow, she's so beautiful. Why is she so beautiful? Because you were told, oh, this person is beautiful because they have this skin tone, this shape of, nose, this haircut. And so it could be a different person, but they're familiar enough to make us feel like we know them, even if we don't.
Yeah, I was told once, and it was like, when you are, like, in terms of filmmaking, for example, you either have to tell a new story in a way that we've seen before, or an old story in a way that we've never seen it been done. And I think about that a lot when I'm working on creative projects. And it makes sense, because you don't want to completely alienate your audience, but you also want to be new and exciting and tell stories that haven't been told in ways that we haven't seen, frankly, just so that those stories can be out there, because there are a lot of stories that we need out there that aren't typically told. But it is really interesting, especially now that I've been hosting a movie podcast, drawing all the parallels from like 90s movies to movies today, or pop culture things that are like repeating themselves. It is wild.
Yeah, I always talk about looking at the past through a contemporary lens, because I find that in rewatching or watching for the first time all of these movies or TV shows from the 90s and beyond, it's like, okay, everything is always, regardless of when we watched that movie for the first time, when it was 1999 or 2022, the movie is always still going to be a product of the cultural zeitgeist that it was created in. And it's just us who individually and collectively as a society have advanced in our ideologies and the ways that we see things, whatever. And so I always think that's really interesting to think about. And when I watch older things, I always just kind of take it with a grain of salt, because of course something that was made in 1997 wouldn't be made in the same way today for a variety of reasons.
Oh yeah, and you also have to like forgive yourself a little bit, because you know, there's so many movies that I grew up loving and that I watch today and I'm like, oh shit, that's so problematic. Like, what the fuck? And there's part of me that is like, you know, that gets a little, I mean, granted, I was a kid in the 90s, so it's not like, you know, but we just took so much as like okay and passable, or even like these rom-coms where now it like kind of makes you want to throw up. And you know, we just released an episode today on You've Got Mail, and which is like, you remember us being like one of the best rom-coms ever, this really sweet love story, and then you watch it today and you're like, oh, these people were having an online affair, he bombed her business and then lured her into manipulated her into a relationship, and she never was like, hey, what the fuck, man? Like, she just falls into his arms at the end. And so, you know, and all three of us were rewatching this now being like, fuck, I really liked this movie, but I can't unknow what I know now, so I can't unsee all the shit that's wrong with this movie. But, you know, like you said, you can appreciate it for the simplicity of and the, like you said, the time that it came from. And you also have to like learn from it.
Right.
And try and be smart about it and not be like, I'm going to show my kids this movie as like the picture of romance.
Right. And we've realized that really no movie sets us up for success in terms of how to operate in the real world. And we always say,
that's also true.
Yeah,
it is a movie.
We always say life imitates art. And I even think that now it's been a really interesting transition where real life doesn't only inspire what we see online, but it's the other way around. Things that happen online now inspire what happens offline, and having that kind of two-way momentum is terrifying most of the time.
Yeah, yes. I feel like we only used to have like, you know, on old episodes of Jackass, they'd be, or like certain shows like that where they'd be like, do not try this at home. And I feel like they should have those same labels now on rom-coms from the 90s, be like, do not have relationships like this now in the year 2022. Like, yeah.
I remember seeing 500 Days of Summer back in the day, and it was a really interesting example. And I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt so much. But it was so interesting at that time to see a movie where, spoiler alert, I love spoilers, they don't end up together at the end. And it's like, but that's the best thing that could have happened. She said she didn't want a relationship. He pursued her anyway. And guess what? She didn't want a relationship. So they're not going to be in a relationship. What's wrong with that? That's the literal best case scenario. That's the best thing that could have happened to them, because the point isn't for people to be together no matter what. The point is for people to be happy and have the relationship be mutually beneficial. But to have the audience, you know, it was positioned in a way where you feel bad for him. You're like, well, why doesn't she love him back? Why doesn't she want to be with him? And it's like,
think about the last clingy dude that was blowing up your spot. Like, why didn't you want to be with him? You just, sometimes the vibe's not there, and that's okay.
She was transparent and upfront from the beginning too. And I just feel like when it comes to communication, boundaries, all of these really important things that people never really seem to learn, whether it is in school, from their parents, from their peers. No one learns these skills, and unless they're truly invested in their personal development, which I love, different tangent, but most people don't put in that work.
No, they don't. And it always, astounds me to think like that we have no education on this except for like the school of hard knocks, just like being out in the world and dating and having shit blow up in our faces. And it seems like we can only really learn these lessons the hard way, which like maybe that's a rite of passage, but also I feel like we really should be learning about this stuff earlier, because what I feel bad about is like, I was very lucky in that like my first serious boyfriend was very kind to me. He was a great guy. I lost my virginity in a very loving and gentle way, as gentle as it can be to break a hymen. But like there are people who like that's not how they learn to experience intimacy or human relationships or whatever, and then they have to carry that on through the rest of their life. And like, granted, I'm not perfect. I've been in therapy for about a bajillion years, but I feel very lucky that that was my introduction into the world of dating. Whereas like, yeah, no shit. Like people are fucked up and they have false expectations. Like we're just kind of released into the wild, and it's like you get what you get and you try to be like okay about it and like not be totally fucked up. But we're all trying our best.
Yeah, I had to learn some of those lessons the hard way. And when you don't have models for healthy boundaries, communication, as you mentioned before, like being able to speak up, being able to say no, all of those things come in handy, I think, obviously as it relates to dating, but also just when it relates to work, for example, being able to be like, I'm not getting paid enough, or things like that, where I let so many things fall to the wayside and I let so many resentments build up within myself because I didn't feel comfortable speaking up, or I didn't feel comfortable stepping on someone's toes, or so I thought. But in reality, it's like if you don't take that action, then you're going to stay where you are. You never are going to figuratively progress forward.
Yeah. And then we're like raised alongside workplace dramas like Grey's Anatomy, where it's like you're either fucking your coworkers in a closet or you're like having wild outbursts and you know what I mean? It's just like there were really no models as far as that was concerned.
Okay, so because you are a musically inclined person, if you were to make a song, I'm going to list a few movies. If you were to make a song about these movies, what would the song be about? So the first movie is 10 Things I Hate About You.
I love that movie so much.
Me too.
But I think I would make a song about I think I would make a song about a girl who knows that the guy who's dating her is doing it for a bet, and she's purposely making his life a living hell.
That's fun. I love that. That's a nice twist.
Yeah. Give us the upper hand for once.
Yeah, right? Okay, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oof. Okay, I would make a song. It would be a duet between, because this is something that I realized was that the son in that movie is actually very weirdly homophobic. So yeah, his like we did that movie on the podcast, and like you realize that Lawrence brother, he like makes a lot of not cool comments about the fact that his dad's in drag. So I'd make a song, an educational song, from a father in drag teaching his son to accept people in all forms and ways of life.
Okay, that's a beautiful thing. At first, I thought you were going to say hot, because I've been obsessed with Matthew Lawrence since forever. Like on my teen idol celeb crush lists. I mean, Freddie Prinze Jr. is always going to be number one for me, but he's definitely up there. And he recently, I mean, I guess sorry for him, or it worked out for the best, he got divorced. And I was like, okay, now could potentially be my time. Yes. And then immediately after, there's tabloid coverage saying that he is with Chili from TLC. And I'm like,
wait, what?
Yeah,
There's
I'm like,
no way.
Weird mashup. But you know
Did they
what?
like meet at 90s Con or something? Like, what is going on?
I'm like, that's the oddest combination I've ever heard. However, if there was one woman, and again, this is alleged, but if there was one woman that he could be with that I would totally and truly just be happy in my heart for, it would be Chili from TLC, because after the whole Usher confessions, like, you know what? Whatever she does in life, including dating my childhood crush, I support her.
Deserves it. Yeah. Holy man.
She deserves the best.
The most 90s coupling I've ever heard. Besides Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar. That's like the second most 90s coupling I've ever heard of.
They are my favorite celebrity couple, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And then my favorite 2000s couple is the girl who played Paige on Degrassi is married to the guy who is the red-haired guy from Mean Girls, where he's like, Mom, I need you to come pick me up when Regina throws the papers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is so niche that you know that, but I expect nothing different from you, but that's amazing.
Yeah. So obviously we had to get very niche here. So yes, I have separate 90s and 2000s favorite celebrity couples.
As you should. As
right.
You absolutely should.
As to be expected. Okay, next movie is another one. These are all my favorites. Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion.
And these are all ones that we've done on the podcast.
Yes.
Okay. Would do a song. Okay, here's the one grudge I hold with this movie is that for like 20 minutes I didn't know they were in a dream sequence, and I was just like, what is going on at the end? So I would have like a full scale musical number of that dream sequence, and just have like anything can happen. It would be really fantastical.
I love that. And I had that same feeling because I've rewatched it maybe like 3 times in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think the first time I rewatched it after it had been a while, I thought, wait a second. I think I remember that it was a dream sequence, but also what if I'm thinking wrong? Am I in my own dream sequence right now?
Right. And that was something that I was like, because I had seen the movie before, and I was just like, whoa, did she just get fucking hit by a limo and just stand up? And I was like, I get this movie's kind of like kitschy and funny and off kilter. It's not altogether the most realistic movie you've ever seen. So it really kind of walks that line. But then once they started floating out of the sunroof, I was like, oh, okay. Something's not right.
Okay, great. Okay, 2 more movies. And yes, they are all ones that have been discussed on your podcast, as that is what's inspired this list. Also, They're just all amazing movies. Yes. Matilda. And yes, there was already a musical about it and a million things, but like an original song.
An original song about Matilda. It's funny because, like, obviously, I think originally this was about like me and me as a singer, but now my brain's just going into like musical theater land. Honestly, I would love to do a song in the style of Matilda's mom. I can't remember her name right now, but what's her name? The actress who plays her, who's Danny DeVito's wife.
Rhea Perlman. Yeah,
I would love to do a song about a day in the life of her character, because she is the funniest person in that movie.
That's amazing. I love that. She is the funniest person in that movie. She's my favorite character, I think, in that movie.
I didn't realize it until I watched it again recently, where I was just like, she's the best part, hands down.
I always pick in movies, the favorite character, I always pick someone who is generally unlikable, because you know that when they come onto the screen, something's going to go down.
Yeah. And I think like growing up, you know, as a little girl, it was originally in a movie, it'd be like, well, my favorite character is like the prettiest, nicest girl. Mm-hmm. The doy, like, just like society just shot all inside my brain. But now it's just like, yeah, who's going to stir shit? Who's going to make me laugh first and foremost? And who is like just fucking going for it? And Rhea Perlman's boobs were taped up to her neck. She looked insane, but she absolutely crushed it.
She did. And then the last movie is The Princess Diaries, which I rewatched, and it is truly an elite movie.
Oh, I would agree. I would agree. Oh, man. I would write a song about how badly I wish I could be Julie Andrews' granddaughter. Because that would be straight from the heart.
That is so relatable. I'm always trying to see, okay, whether it's an Italian luxury car family, like what kind of family could I potentially have ties to in case I could be next in line for an inheritance? Could I be the next Princess of Genovia? I need to do research and find out.
You do look like, you look like a Disney princess. Like you look like
Thanks.
Snow White. So I feel like that there's a very good chance that you have royalty in you.
I would say so too. And you know what? Snow White, it was a very interesting story, another product of its time.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a definite possibility.
You definitely look like you could have descended from a kingdom somewhere. I'm cute, but I do feel like I look like I descended from Fraggle Rock. Like that's where I feel like my ties come back to.
Oh my God. You mean a place where, okay, that theme song is fire. Like that theme song is everyone's musically inclined. Everybody's having fun.
Yes. It's a whole energy. You know what I mean? It's my kind of weird. So
I love that. Yeah. When I was a kid, for Halloween, for playtime, I would only be a princess, never anything scary, had to have royal blood. A friend of mine was like, you were probably a princess in your past life. I'm like, I'm a princess in this life too. Let's be honest.
Tell them. Yeah, honestly, I'm very interested in past life stuff, and I have some theories, but I think so. Like, I feel like when you feel like such a strong connection to something, like how can you deny it?
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I had a blast.
I had so much fun. This was great. We talked about all my favorite things. And happy to come back anytime and talk about literally anything else. You're such a great host.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, definitely. We could go at this like all day. I mean, technically, professionally, we do.
Yeah, this is
all day already. Yeah.
Weird. It's almost like we've done this before. No, this was so fun. Thank you so much. And anyone who's listening, feel free to head over when you're done listening to this podcast and giving it all of the ratings and reviews. Go over, check out Millennial Movie Club and stream Plant Daddy wherever you like to listen to music.
Amazing. Thanks again. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap for this week. If you like Nicstalgia, please connect with me on social, subscribe to the Nicstalgia newsletter at nicstalgia.substack.com, and follow, rate, review on your platform of choice. Everything's linked in the show notes, including where to find more about our guest of the week. Thank you so much for your support, and that was this week's episode of Nicstalgia.